Well, very quickly then, I just learned, as I suspected, that Gretel Van Wieren is her Dutch name suggested to me that, and she did confirm that she is a minister in the Reformed Church of America. She is currently writing a dissertation entitled Restoring Earth, Restored to Earth, in the Religion Department at Yale University. And she's going to speak to us about restoring the human-nature connection.
So my talk skips around a bit, so I'm going to need to ask you to be a patient audience up front. But the reasons that it skips around so much are multiple. In the first place, the idea of restoring humanity's relationship to nature is a multiple and complex idea, phenomena, and action. It draws on ethical, spiritual, theological, ecological dimensions, cultural dimensions, just to name a few. And so I traverse through these various disciplines as well as their discourses a bit. And also in the end, I incite a more poetic, emotive, intuitive essay. And I do this because it speaks to the idea of restoration in this sort of more emotive, intuitive way. And I also do this because I think that one of the roles of the religions in addressing the ecological crisis is to, in a more emotive and intuitive way, incite and inspire our love for creation and for the divine within creation. Because I really believe with Leopold, with Aldo Leopold, the father of the conservation, modern day conservation movement, that we will not care for that which we do not love. And with Stephen Jay Gould, and with Augustine, that we will not care for that which we do not love. So then I want to ask two basic questions and then close with this more poetic, I guess, contemplative type of essay. So the two questions that I would like to ask are, first, when we say that we want to restore humans' relationship to nature, a claim which modern environmentalists have been making for decades, when we say that we want to restore humans' relationship to nature, what more precisely is it that we want to restore? So that's my first question. What do we want to restore when we say we want to restore humanity's relationship with nature? And then my second question, building on this first question, is why do we want to, and why ought we restore this thing we've said we want to restore? So the second question is, why do we want to restore it? So the first one, what do we want to restore? And the second one, why do we want to restore it? So the first question, when we say we want to restore humanity's connection with nature, what is it we are trying to restore? In part, what we say we want to restore depends on what we think has been lost, degraded, or impoverished. To restore, in part, means to make stand back up. It means, in one sense, looking to the past of what was. But it also means looking to the present and to the future. To restore an ecosystem, for example, in the strictest sense of ecological restoration, is to attempt to recover the ecological processes and functions that have been damaged or destroyed, but it also is to cause them to stand up, to operate sustainably into the future. Or at least that's how the Society of Ecological Restoration understands it. So in part, if we say with the deep ecologists, for instance, that what has been lost is humanity's inherent primordial sense of being one with nature, its beings as well as the whole earth, of being wild animal, as Edward Abbey has written, then what will need to be restored is wild nature, or at least places that foster the ability for humans to live in very close relationship with nature, its processes, its rawness. So I want to say two things about what we want to restore, and both relate to the metaphor of health, as does my point as to why we ought to restore the human nature connection. We want to restore health to nature, to ecosystems, to land, to persons, and we also want to consider restoring ordinary daily contact with nature and nature-like forms and processes, whether this is through contact with the natural environment or with the built environment. So first, the idea that we want to attempt to restore land health, the health of ecosystems, the health of nature itself. This, of course, is a complex idea and can take all sorts of forms with a variety of techniques and policies and definitions and so forth. Land health for Aldo Leopold meant the capacity of an ecosystem or land community, which included soil, plants, animals, energy, sunlight, water, etc., for internal self-renewal. Some have critiqued the concept of ecological health as too anthropomorphic, too concerned with human health, difficult to measure, or flat. As environmental philosopher Holmes Ralston once asked me in a personal conversation, is really all we're after is health? Isn't that not enough? Isn't what we're really after thriving, wonderful, prolific life? I, however, agree with American essayist Wendell Berry that health, when thought of in its fullest sense, refers to wholeness. And when Berry says this, he cites Sir Albert Howard that the whole problem with health is in soil, plant, animal, and man, and human, is one great subject. I think the contemporary environmental practice of ecological restoration is one example of bringing this more holistic concept of health to land, to humans, and so forth. Particularly when restorationists like Stephanie Mills and other people talk about restoring the whole of ecosystems, and that whole including humans, including the human self and the personal heart. There are many examples of restoration projects, rural, urban, suburban. They span the spectrum from the small ones we see in our own communities to large ones like Chicago Wilderness Project, to the current restoration efforts in Lake Calumet and the south side of Chicago, to a big restoration project that I just talked to a person up in the Champlain Valley in Vermont, where the Nature Conservancy, sorry Eric, Eric said yesterday that he doesn't like the Nature Conservancy, but they're doing an amazing project in central Vermont. A community last year planted 16,000 native trees that they had raised at a nursery in a community, West Haven, Vermont, and planted with a variety of community groups in central Vermont and so forth. So in addition to restoring land health, though, in terms of what we want to restore, I also want to say that what we are trying to restore when we're speaking of restoring the human-nature connection is persons' daily, ordinary contact with nature. And nature-like forms and processes, whether this comes from contact with the outside natural world, which I still would argue is preferable in terms of the experiences and benefits that it provides, or through the built form.